guys, welcome back to the Pulling Curls podcast. Today on episode 98, we're doing what everybody just goes, hey, Hillary, I just really want a normal birth. How do I make that happen? Today, we're going to untangle it. Welcome to the Pulling Curls podcast. I'm Hillary, your curly-headed host on the podcast where we untangle everything from pregnancy, parenting, and home routines. I want you to know that there are no right answers for every family, and I find that simplifying my priorities is almost always the answer. It's tangled, just like my hair. Okay, guys, before we get started, could you please subscribe? You might have found this podcast on my blog or Instagram or I don't know where, but if you just go to your favorite podcast player, type in the Pulling Curls podcast, you'll find my curly-haired head and subscribe. Thanks. Okay, guys, today's guest is my friend Tara. We used to work together. I'm so excited to have her on because she just had a baby, and I think she brings a lot of good information, both from the viewpoint of a mom who's having a baby and a mom who's been a nurse. So I want to introduce my friend Tara. Do you feel prepared for your delivery? In just 3 short hours, you can be prepared for the confident, collaborative delivery you want. You'll know what to expect and how to talk with your healthcare team, and there are no boring lessons in this class. I'll use humor, stories from my 20 years in the delivery room to engage both of you. I love how Alyssa told me that she found herself laughing at things that used to sound scary. Most of all, you guys are going to be on the same page from bump to bassinet. Join the online prenatal class for couples today. You can save 15% with coupon code UNTANGLED. You can find the link in the show notes. Hey, Tara, welcome to the Pulling Curls podcast.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you on. I love it when I have friends come on because, you haven't done like 20 podcasts before this.
Yeah, no, this is my first podcast, so I'm a newbie for sure.
Not your last, Tara. Okay, you just had a baby. How old?
I did. So she is turning 6 months old this week. I know, time is flying, right? It's kind of crazy.
Tara and I did not work together. Like, we would work together a fair amount, and then she got married. But anyway, I think I've seen her 3 times since she got engaged.
Yeah, I think you saw me get engaged.
And she got pregnant a fair amount after she got married. So, yeah.
Yep. It was like you saw me when I got engaged, and then you saw me maybe when I was like 6 months pregnant, and then now you're seeing me again with a 6-month-old baby.
Yeah. Tara got engaged at work.
Yes, I did. It was like a total shock. Of course, it was like a crazy day too. So I had to go back to work after getting engaged, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, we were trying to get you off. We were trying like everything.
Yeah, I don't think the stars aligned. I mean, it was a great day, but it just was kind of crazy at the same time.
We will all always remember it. It was an insane day.
Yes, it was, but it was fun. And it's a good memory to have. I've got some fun pictures.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to have Tara come on because she is a labor nurse who just had a baby. And I have to tell you that when you are a labor nurse having a baby, whatever you're experiencing in your mind, that labor nurse has it like 20-fold because we think of every single thing we've ever seen that's gone wrong. So
absolutely.
It's not so great. So you were probably really just hoping for a normal vaginal.
Yeah. I think that sometimes they say ignorance is bliss. And I think in this case, it feels like I've seen almost everything. And so when I found out I was pregnant, the anxiety kind of kicks in. You're like, oh my gosh, what if this happens and this and this? And so I think it was good because I kind of knew what to expect. But then there were still parts where I was like, oh, I still feel like a new mom. Do I really know what's going on,
Yeah. And I have to say that I had given so many baby baths to other babies. And you go home to baby
I know.
room.
I think honestly, I felt more comfortable taking care of other people's babies than when my baby came. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, she's so fragile. I made this,
I know. Yeah. It's so different. Anyway, so many people say, Hillary, I just want a normal delivery. And I think when they say that, they're meaning I don't want to have what people might term as a hippie birth or, they probably don't want to birth in the tub. They probably don't want to squat by the bed. They just want to have a normal delivery. They trust their doctor, but they also don't want they don't want a C-section and they don't want other
which is totally fair.
Yeah. None of us do. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to have this birth plan. It's going to be new for these labor nurses. Nope. Everybody doesn't want a episiotomy. Everybody doesn't want a C-section. They like to avoid Pitocin, in general. So
Yeah, I think that like everyone's definition of normal is a little, I mean, it's their own, obviously, but to me, the same thing. I like went in with an open mind, and I think that that's really important. I obviously have experience working in labor and delivery, so I kind of had an element of knowing what to expect. But I think that the best thing was to just be open minded and know that I trust my doctor. I delivered where I worked, so I trusted the nurses that were taking care of me. And even as somebody, if I didn't have that experience, you have to trust that your nurses and doctors want to do what's best for you. We're not in there like, oh, I just want to cut this girl and do a C-section because I got places to be. And so I think having an open mind, but also if you do have a birth plan or you do have something in mind that you'd like to do, being open at communicating with your doctor and nurses is really a good way to like bring down that anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so normal to be anxious. And especially when you have a birth plan that you feel like this is what I want to have happen.
Yeah, I think especially like after taking care of people, if you're like somebody in your life or like you have a lot of control over the things that you do and the people you surround yourself with, it's kind of scary. I went into my doctor's appointment at 38 weeks, like, okay, I'm like healthy, things are great. I got like 2 more weeks to prepare and have my baby. And then my blood pressure was through the roof, and my doctor was like, girl, it's time. We're going to induce you tomorrow. And I was like, what? And I lived an hour and a half away from the hospital I was delivering at. So, for me, like I didn't have all my things. I didn't have anything prepared. And so that was anxiety inducing. But I think that like if you are willing to like go with the flow a little bit and know in your brain, like, okay, these are the normal things I want. And if you're not doing anything too kooky, like things generally work out that way. And your delivery is going to be fine. I mean, we're going to take care of you. Whether you have a C-section or vaginal delivery, like you're going to have a baby, and the goal really is to be healthy mom, healthy baby, right?
Yeah. And happy. And I feel like a lot of times, guys, you might not want to hear this. Your unhappiness is caused a lot by you wanting a specific plan rather than what happened at birth.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's hard because you want to like manage your expectations. And yeah, I think a lot of people, they're like, this is my birth plan. It's concrete. This is what's going to happen. And then they find themselves getting really disappointed when they're not dilating the way that they thought they would, or they might need like a vacuum delivery, or, there's all these things that maybe they thought, oh, I'm not going to have all of that. And then it kind of just starts progressing that way. And so you kind of just want to manage your expectations and be realistic, but also I've had dads who get extremely frustrated, and it's like, whoa, we're trying to do what's safe for mom and baby. I don't need you yelling at me when we're trying to like do what's best and have a healthy, safe delivery.
Oh, I think that's really true because you've got two people's expectations and sometimes they're not even on the same page. I do think it's so funny when you have a very chill mom and then you've got this dad in the corner who's like Googling everything you're saying and you're like,
oh my gosh,
oh, Nelly.
And like, I'm all about like, I think knowledge is power. I think that it's great. Like if you've done your research and like you're evidence based and like both of you are really into whatever you so choose that you want to maybe have in your birth plan. But yeah, I've had a situation where the baby's heart tones were down. It was an indication for a C-section. The mom was like, yep, here's my consent. Let's go. And the dad was like, we're not doing that. That's not natural. We're not. And it's just like, well, we kind of need to have a live baby delivery, And so I think being on the same page, but also like the dad needed to be realistic too, because he's not the person who might be injured. The mom and the baby are really our priority in that moment. So,
yeah, and actually legally, mom comes before because it's her body at that point. So we wouldn't ever take dad's like refusal of consent before that.
No.
That is their own marriage problem. Good luck to them.
So yeah, I definitely think that like the mom and dad, they are a package deal. And so like as a nurse, you are juggling both of their expectations, and what the mom might know, the dad might not. You don't know if they've talked ahead of time. So I think definitely like having those conversations when I first meet them and saying like, okay, like what's your all's plan? What do you think is going to happen? Or like, if you have any questions about things, I like to answer those as soon as I would meet my patients, because I feel like that sets you up for success for the rest of the day, and both parties aren't anxious,
Yes. And especially if they answer honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think I'm like pretty approachable when I come in the room. I don't have any patients I can text and be like, hey, what'd you think? But I definitely think like if they can be as honest as they can with me and be like, listen, this scares the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'm going to explain things in a way that's not going to scare you. And we're going to approach things in a way that is best for you. Everybody's different, and what I might have done in one delivery, I might not do in another,
Yeah. I love that, because just be honest, because sometimes you'll notice that they seem really afraid or their blood pressure's a little bit high, and you're like, hey, are you nervous? And they're like, no. And you're like, girl.
Yeah. You're like, sis, it looks like you're maybe a little anxious. Or, I've had situations where like you're in labor and like everything is starting to become really real. Like you just start crying or something scares you or, and as the nurse, like, I don't know what's going on in your head. I can't read your mind. So if you're just sitting in bed crying, like, I'm going to ask you what's going on. And I feel like it's a good time to be vulnerable. And if there's something going on, like, let me know if I can try to make it better. I can't fix your marriage if something's going on there. But I think I definitely, if something's stressing you out or if there's somebody that's helping take care of you that you're not vibing with, that I can kind of eliminate that stress, like you need to let me know.
Yes. So often we have patients who all of a sudden will start to cry. And I mean, my head always initially goes to what did he do? I almost always find that it's something that the spouse did, but sometimes they're just scared out of the living daylights and they're going to be a mom. Like there's so many emotions. It's not just delivery, which
oh yeah,
you should be afraid.
I was going to say, yeah,
because there's a lot
scary.
changing.
There's a lot of changes and like your hormones are going wacky. Your life is about to change for the better. And I mean, you get situations where like some people, they're in happy marriages, things are great. Some people, they just broke up with their baby daddy, but they want the father of their child there. So they've got some like social stuff going on that maybe we didn't know about, but that's really on their mind, So there's always something going on. And as a nurse, like I would like you to be as honest as you can with me so I can try to make it the best experience possible for you. You don't want to look at your birth story and be like, ugh, that was the worst thing ever. That was so traumatic for me. My nurse didn't care about me,
Yeah, I would be devastated if I found out one of my patients felt that way.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, sometimes I probably just don't vibe with a patient and I wouldn't be shocked if somebody felt that way. But I think if somebody which would be like 99% of my patients, that I felt like I got along all day and then they were just like, she didn't support me at all, I would have been devastated inside. I really would have wanted to know that. For sure.
Yeah, that would break my heart. I mean, you try your best. Like every single person you meet is like a fresh slate and you try your best to make it the best experience you can for them. And like you said, not everybody's going to like you. I'm very upbeat and perky and happy. And if somebody's looking for someone who's really mellow, I might not be your girl. But at the same time, like you want to give the best care that you can. And so, yeah, you just roll with it.
Yeah. And if there's something that you're just like, I wish my nurse was a little bit this XYZ and you're changing shifts. Sometimes I'll be like, ask my patients and be like, is there like a kind of nurse that you wish, especially if I'm not vibing, that you kind of wish things were different? You were more mellow, not as funny because I am very funny, is there something I have asked people that before? And then I'll go to the charge nurse and be like, hey, could we get her just because I want you to have a great stay? And if I'm not your great stay, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think what's like great about labor and delivery is you're not, some people don't have their baby as soon as they get in there. Like some people are there for a couple days, which can be normal for them. And so they might want the same nurse back, or they might want somebody who's either like you or the complete opposite of you. So yeah, I think if they tell you before shift change, like, hey, I had nurse so-and-so last night, is she on again? I want her back. If we can make that happen, I loved doing that because I think being with someone familiar makes you more comfortable, especially in this type of situation.
I think that's always so surprising. So I never delivered this. I love this conversation, but we're going to get back to normal birth. Don't you worry, people.
Yeah.
But one of the nurses I had on my third baby came up to visit me in postpartum, and I was amazed at like how happy I was to see her, which I had done that as a nurse so many times, but seeing a friendly face in the hospital is so nice. So yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, I loved doing that for my patients too. Well, and like you're so vulnerable. I mean, you're like all your lady bits are out for your nurse and doctor and everybody to see. And like I think there's something to be said about how amazing having a baby is and like how vulnerable you are in that moment. So yeah, seeing a familiar face makes you feel good, but also you're like, yes, I did it. It's kind of like a fun celebration for you both too.
Same point though, if you didn't like your nurse from the last night, I always give people an out too. I would say, if you didn't like her, that's 100% fine. Just let me know and I can make sure that she's not your nurse tonight because
yeah, absolutely.
Nobody's going to get offended, especially if you do it before they are assigned you. It's worse once you've started that path. So there you go.
Yeah, I'd be like, "Ooh, girl, let's switch." yeah, not so much.
Okay, so back to normal birth. Okay, so I think sometimes people don't understand what normal is. So it is normal if we're talking percentages to have a vaginal delivery, right?
Yes.
Because 1/3-ish, depending at your hospital and your provider. Hopefully we're decreasing that number. It is normal to tear a little bit on your first baby. So that's just something that is normal, but it is not normal, I don't think, to get cut. Definitely not where we worked.
I was going to say where we worked, I think they were working really hard to try to prevent like a first-time mom having a C-section unless there was indications. Most C-sections, it's like the baby's breech, or maybe you have a placenta previa, or in like emergency baby. So you're 8 centimeters, the baby's heart tones are going down. They're not going up when the nurses and doctors are doing everything we know that we can to try to raise those heart tones. Then yeah, you would need a C-section. But I would say most people feel like normal would be a vaginal delivery.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think some people have a stigma against C-sections, and there's really nothing wrong with those either. I mean, you have to have a healthy baby. That's the goal. And a healthy mom. You don't want the mom to die trying to have a vaginal delivery either. So
I've 100% seen times that it saved either mom or baby multiple times a year.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think normal, I mean, it can depend, but I think when people think of normal, they definitely think of vaginal delivery.
Okay, here's another little news flash for everybody. I think at most hospitals, it's normal to have a little Pitocin.
Yes. I would say so too, especially in the 2 hospitals I've worked at. I think for an induction, unless you're like 3 or 4 centimeters along and they just need to kind of like augment you, most of the time they would start with the Cytotec or maybe Cervidil. And then once you dilate a little bit more, they would start that Pitocin and get the ball rolling, or else you'd be in labor for a week. It would take forever.
But I will say most doctors, even if you just come in like regular 2 to 3 contractions, they'll be like, just throw a little pit on her. And that's 100% up to you to say no. There's absolutely no reason that we need to throw Pitocin on you. But
oh yeah, I was going to say at the end of the day, like the patient can always say no. But yeah, I think it just like depends on everyone's situation. Like I'm all for Pitocin augmenting labor. I think it helps. And especially if you're trying to go say natural or not with an epidural for a while, you're not wanting to be laboring in the bed for 4 days. You know, your body, it's a slow process, especially if it's your first baby. So it could take a while.
yeah, so that one's totally up to you. But I have to say that if you're looking at percentages at a hospital, adding some Pitocin is probably on the normal end. I would guess more than 50%. And I'm not even talking about, it's 100% normal to get Pitocin after the baby's born to prevent bleeding.
Yes.
But
yes.
yeah, it's probably pretty normal to throw a little Pitocin on.
Yeah. I agree. And I think people get a little bit nervous about Pitocin too, because they're like, oh, it's this medication and it causes me to contract. But Pitocin, we naturally make it in our bodies and we release it from our brains. And so I've had people be like, I don't want to get Pitocin. I'm going to have an allergic reaction. It's like, well, probably not, because our bodies naturally make this and it helps the process go. And like you said, we get it afterward to help prevent postpartum hemorrhages. So it definitely helps, and it has multiple different hats that it wears and jobs that it can do.
And we can just give you a little whiff. Like we're giving you like 1 drop in a half an hour. Like that's how you're starting at. So don't feel like, if you've started the floodgate of Pitocin that you can't say, you know what, this is enough. I feel like I'm going fast enough. Stop. That's the good thing about Pitocin. It's very variable.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we as nurses, I mean, we're watching the contractions in the baby's heart tones. And so we're changing it. We can go up on it. We can go down on it. We can stop it, and it has such a short half-life that really, once you stop it, it's kind of out of your system relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's so great. Love Pitocin. I mean, it gets such a bad name on TikTok and everywhere, but I love it. I've seen it save lives. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I've seen it save lives. I've seen it do wonderful things in terms of birthing babies. And then also just as somebody who went through it, like I would have been in labor forever. They were inducing my body and my body wasn't ready to have a baby. My blood pressure said otherwise, but I think if I would have refused it, I would have been there for a long time. And then my outcomes might've been different,
Yeah. So Pitocin. One other thing I was thinking that's also pretty darn normal is a little hiccup. So the nurses may run in, we might turn you, we might increase your IV, all those kind of fun things. They might put oxygen on you, but that's kind of like going by the wayside, luckily, because nobody loves that sucking in that Barbie doll for hours on end. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of dries your mouth out. But yeah, it's definitely normal. Babies generally, they look beautiful on the monitor. Sometimes they'll have what we call little variables. And so maybe their heart goes down just a little bit. And so that's when we do what we call our interventions. So we might turn you. We have peanut balls, which are like these yoga balls we can stick between your legs that help open up your cervix and open up your pelvis. That helps a lot. IV fluids, like you talked about. I know some people come in and they're like, well, I don't want to get anything. And it's like, okay, but can we agree on at least having an IV? So in case your baby needs a little extra fluid, or we do need to start that Pitocin, we can do that safely, because the worst thing that could happen in my mind is you've got a mom who comes in, doesn't want an IV, doesn't want anything. And then we have to go to do a C-section or something emergent. And we don't have that access that we need, But yeah, I think moving patients, very normal, giving them a little bit of fluid to help the baby out, especially when your water's been broken. Sometimes they'll do an amnio infusion. So that kind of helps give your baby a little extra if it's getting a little stressed out during those contractions. There's all sorts of fun stuff that we do as nurses to try to make the baby as happy as we can.
Yeah. And if you're ever like, is this pretty normal? Ask, because a lot of times people get nervous because multiple nurses come in. But a lot of times if I see Tara's having a variable and she's going down the hall, I'll just go with her because it's so much easier to turn a patient with two hands.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Teamwork makes the dream work in labor and delivery. And the goal of our unit in general is like you want a safe delivery. You don't want to watch your coworkers patient having all this crazy stuff happen and you're like, all right, girl, good luck, have fun. You want everybody to work together. And yeah, as the patient, it might be scary to see a flood of people in the room, but in that moment, your nurse might be focusing on like this, that, and the other. And then this other nurse is like, okay, and we've also got to do this. So everybody's brains are working together to make your baby look beautiful on the monitor, but also make sure you're okay too.
Yeah. In fact, Tara and I a lot of times would work with these teams that were just like, it's like a dance when you go in there because you would just know like these two are going to turn, this one will do the IV. And that it's so great when you work with a team like that. And so don't be afraid if like there's multiple nurses that come in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like letting your husband or significant other or your partner, whoever it is in the room, also know these things because you can see they kind of like stand in the corner and they're really scared. They're like, oh my gosh, where do I stand? Because everything's happening and they don't necessarily maybe know what's going on or what the nurses are doing. And so just them knowing as well, like we're all in there to try to help and make we want your goals of your delivery to come true, And so if that means flipping and flopping and doing all of these things to make it happen, then that's what we're doing. And we're not doing anything crazy or trying to like kick the dad out or put them in the corner or make them scared either.
Yeah. I think it is 100% scarier for the dad. You see them
definitely.
like everything's just floating through their brain because they have zero control. Nothing's happening to them. They're just left out in the corner. So that is really hard. I love that.
Yeah. And I think like my husband is a resident physician. And so he went through medical school. He kind of knows like the basic sciences, of labor and delivery. But I think for him to be in that situation and I had to be flipped and flopped and I didn't have, say, the most normal delivery myself. And so he definitely was scared and he didn't know what to do. And I think he felt powerless, but as long as they can just be your number one cheerleader, that's like the best piece of advice I can give is just like, they need to be supportive and a good cheerleader and just make you feel comfy.
And they can 100% ask questions. Sometimes dads come in and they feel like mom needs to ask all the questions, but no, I'm just as open to tell dad whatever he wants to know as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Cause I think like as moms or when you're pregnant, you're doing a lot more research. You're like, what's going on inside my body? You've got these apps on your phone now that you can be like, oh, this is happening and that. But like the dads sometimes are a little left in the dark and they don't really know what to expect or what's happening or all the crazy fancy words that we might be using when you're there having your baby. So yeah, ask lots of questions.
Yeah. All right. So let's just recap. It's good to just kind of broaden your perspective of normal.
Yes.
Normal might be a little bit more medical. You're probably not Caroline Ingalls delivering on your bed in the prairie. That wouldn't be considered normal anymore.
No.
Especially in the hospital. So, and then also just talking with your doctor about kind of what you prefer early on. I'm not talking like at 6 weeks. I'm talking like after about 30 weeks.
I think like a birth plan is great. And like as a nurse, like I loved when my patients would be like, this is my plan. I want a delayed cord clamping or, I want all the baby meds or I want a breastfeed or bottle feed or whatever they so choose. Like I think communicating that with your doctor and your nurses ahead of time is good because the last thing your doctor wants to hear is when the baby's coming out, you're like, I want to do like delayed cord clamping for 10 minutes and this, that, and the other. And you're like, wait, where did that come from? So definitely open communication.
Yeah. Early on. Yeah.
Yes.
And then also being open to, because if baby's not looking so great, sometimes that delayed cord clamping is shorter than we wish, but all those kind of things. And that's okay. I mean, let me be honest, that delayed cord clamping just barely started like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it just barely started. And I know I was like looking at the research before I talked to you because at our hospital, they would generally cord clamp just regularly for like 30 to 60 seconds. And it wasn't until recently where people are like, I want it delayed until it stops pulsing. And I really haven't found any research on like the CDC or ACOG or anything that says that that's beneficial for the babies. But I mean, I don't know. I think, yeah, if the baby is like gray and needs a little bit of extra help but by the nursery nurse, like you got to put the priority of the baby before your like birth plan of wanting a super delayed cord clamp.
Yeah. I feel like we've gone all the spheres because when I started, there was a lot of real crunchy moms who wanted super long delayed cord clamping. And then I feel like it kind of disappeared for a while, but the standard of care is 30 to 60 seconds through NRP. So
yes,
I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah.
And that's what they've shown. And just a side note, in case people want more info, once the cord is in air and cold and not in oxygen, it starts to clamp off on its own. its job because, Caroline Ingalls delivering by herself in her cabin, wouldn't have been able to clamp the cord and cut it off on her own. She had to wait for Pa to come home and help her.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm so thankful for modern medicine. I'm glad that she hopefully survived that delivery, but luckily modern medicine is here and we don't have to like go hug a tree and have a baby in the field, like
Tara, you wouldn't have made it.
no, I don't think I'm dead too. I don't think I would have. There's no way. I had to have a vacuum delivery. I had to have like all sorts of fun stuff. So for me, that would have not have been a possibility.
Yeah. And then I think after your delivery, if you feel like something wasn't normal and it's kind of bugging you, talk to your team about it because we can't read your mind. Once I started learning more about birth trauma, when I was up on postpartum, I would be like, hey, was there any questions you had about what happened during your delivery or stuff like that? But most nurses don't because we're so focused on like what the heck we're doing that day. But yeah, just say, like Tara was saying, she had a vacuum. And if she wasn't a labor nurse, she might say, hey, was that normal? Does everything look okay on the baby's head? How often do people get a vacuum? It wasn't something I was prepared for or aware of. And talk with your team right after, because I think a lot of times people save that for that 6-week checkup and the doctor literally has zero recollection of what even happened.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And especially it can bug you if you kind of didn't understand it or that it was kind of emergent in that situation and they're just wanting to get the baby out. And so, yes, they talk to you really quickly, but if the baby's heart tones are down, they're like, we have to do this or else we need to go have a C-section, And I think definitely like talking it out will help in terms of birth trauma. But also the worst thing you can do is like hold it in and then you go home and you Google it and then you find everybody's scary story on the internet that's their way of dealing with their birth trauma, but it's going to scare you more, And
it's going to make it a bigger deal in your brain.
Oh, absolutely. I think by talking to people who like, this is their job, most people I would say are experts that are working in that field. Like if they're able to explain it in a way that it helps you cope with what happened, I think that's way better than going on like mommyblog.com and reading somebody else's really terrifying story. And then your postpartum hormones are all crazy. And then you start feeling some type of way,
Yeah. And we love like labor nurses, postpartum nurses love to teach. I love to teach well, because there's a lot of stuff we're doing after you have a baby, like housekeeping. And I would love to explain exactly why we use the vacuum, what I saw, how it all happened, why it was effective while I'm like cleaning up the room.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say we're like full of facts. And I think that's what's so awesome about labor and delivery is we're constantly doing continuing education. There's evidence-based studies as to why we do what we do. So if we can share that to make our patients have like a better understanding of what's going on, but also if they come back and have another baby, they're like, oh yeah, I know about that. Like I feel way better about that. That's the goal,
Yeah, we want you to be happy. So if there's something that you're like, this didn't seem normal and it's kind of sticking in my brain, talk to your nurses while you're still at the hospital.
Yes.
Even if you get up to postpartum and it's starting, you could ask your postpartum nurse, hey, is there a labor nurse that could just kind of come explain what happened? It might feel a little awkward at the time, but we would so much rather than you have like that area of your brain smoothed out so that you can like jump into motherhood, if not holding on to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like when you start your motherhood journey, you want to be the best prepared you can be, but you also don't want things lingering that are going to bother you. And then you're taking care of a baby and you've got no sleep. And like I said, your postpartum hormones are kind of going up and down. And yeah, you want to be in a good headspace.
Yeah. So I don't know if this gave you guys advice, but we're mostly, when Tara and I were talking about this in advance, we're like, exactly what is normal? There's things that usually happen. And if that's what you want, that's probably what will happen because it usually happens. So
yeah, I think like normal for one person could be your water breaks. You go to the OB triage. They do an amniture test. Your water's broken. We get you ready to have a baby and we kind of see, are you in labor on your own or do you need, say, a little bit of Pitocin to help you kickstart? Or you could be someone like me that you go to your doctor's appointment, your blood pressure looks a little funky. So they send you to OB triage. They say, girl, this is not good. This looks like preeclampsia. We're going to run some extra tests, but we should probably induce you. And in that situation, that's how my labor story started. So while that might not be normal for one person, that was my normal. And yeah, it's hard to tell. Or it might be normal for them to get scheduled for a C-section. And that's great too. Maybe their first baby, they had a C-section because the baby was breached. They don't feel like trying for the VBAC and they just get scheduled and go. So I think like being open-minded is awesome in labor and delivery because every single baby is different and every single delivery is different. And so going in with an open mind, you might not want the weird, crunchy granola, I don't know, type of experience. But if you want something that's very standard of care for us and you go in and you're just going with the flow, I think you're going to have a great experience.
Yeah, I love that. Yep. Go with the flow, be open to it. I talk about that a ton in my class because get education, but then just be open to what unfolds because you're not in charge of Mother Nature or your body, sadly.
And I think that that's really hard. And that's why I think like those education classes, like the classes that you teach, there's lots of Instagrams by like labor and delivery nurses that are so helpful because the more you know, the better you're going to feel. And I think in my case, like if I wasn't a labor nurse, I'd have been so scared. But honestly, like knowing what I knew, and also I took classes as well online, it helped prepare me to be in the headspace to kind of roll with the punches and also know that I was going to be taken care of regardless of what was going on, you know?
Yeah. And, you had trust in your team because you knew those people. But if you go in just being like, saying affirmations to yourself, it's something you're concerned about. My labor team cares a lot about me because I will promise you that they do.
They do. And I know we might be strangers when we walk in the door, but you're going to get to know me. It's not like, I don't know. I tell people about myself. I tell people about my life and my baby. And, you get to know me on a more personal level. So you're not like, oh, this girl's just like a random stranger delivering my baby at my most vulnerable moment,
Yeah.
So I think like building that trust is really important. And then also educating yourself before and kind of trusting that having your baby in the hospital is a safe space. We want to keep you and your baby safe, and we want to do what's best to give you the best delivery that we can,
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Yep.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on, Tara. This was awesome.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It was fun.
Okay, guys, I love that episode. It maybe didn't go according to my initial, like what I wrote in my phone, but I really liked how we talked about expanding how you think of a normal birth. And we talked about like having dads understand that too, which is why it's so important that dads get a prenatal class. I just think understanding all these different things of what could be quote unquote normal is so important so that you just feel confident in your delivery. So take a prenatal class. You can find mine through the link in the profile. You can even save 15% with coupon code Untangled. I don't want you guys to miss out and to be so worried during your delivery because the more you go with the flow just brings you a happy mom and a happy baby. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope we helped smooth out a few of the snarls in your life. We drop an episode every Monday, and we always appreciate it when you guys share and review. Until next time, we hope you have a tangle-free day.